Text 12 in this chapter of Bhagavad-gita is titled Karma Yoga. So we'll read the verse and you can just follow along. I'm sure everyone has access. So the meter, everyone has their own meter, but there's a standard meter, so I'll just use that. Ishtan Bogan Hivo Deva Dasyante Yagya Bhavataha Tardatan Apradayabhyo Yo Bhunkte Stena Eva Saha. So the translation is in charge of the various necessities of life. The demigods, being satisfied by the performance of yajna, sacrifice, supply all necessities to man. But he who enjoys these gifts without offering them to the demigods in return is certainly a thief. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The demigods are authorized supplying agents on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu. Therefore, they must be satisfied by the performance of prescribed yajnas. In the Vedas, there are different kinds of yajnas, sacrifices, prescribed for different kinds of demigods, but all are ultimately offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For one who cannot understand what the personality of Godhead is, sacrifice to the demigods is recommended. According to the different material qualities of the persons concerned, different types of yajnas are recommended in the Vedas. Worship of different demigods is also on the same basis, namely, according to different qualities. For example, the meat eaters are recommended to worship the goddess Kali, the ghastly form of material nature. And before the goddess, the sacrifice of animals is recommended. But for those who are in the mode of goodness, the transcendental worship of Vishnu is recommended. But ultimately, all yajnas are meant for gradual promotion to the transcendental position. For ordinary men, at least 5 yajnas, known as Pancha Mahayagya, are necessary. One should know, however, that all the necessities of life that the human society requires are supplied by the demigod agents of the Lord. No one can manufacture anything. Take, for example, all the eatables of human society. These eatables include grains, fruits, vegetables, milk, sugar, etc., for the persons in the mode of goodness, and also eatables for the non-vegetarians, like meats, etc., none of which can be manufactured by men. Then again, take, for example, heat, light, water, air, etc., which are also necessities of life. None of them can be manufactured by the human society. Without the Supreme Lord, there can be no profuse sunlight, moonlight, rainfall, breeze, etc., without which no one can live. Obviously, our life is dependent on supplies from the Lord. Even for our manufacturing enterprises, we require so many raw materials like metal, sulfur, mercury, manganese, and so many essentials, all of which are supplied by the agents of the Lord, with the purpose that we should make proper use of them to keep ourselves fit and healthy for the purpose of self-realization, leading to the ultimate goal of life, namely liberation from the material struggle for existence. This aim of life is attained by performance of yajnas. If we forget the purpose of human life and simply take supplies from the agents of the Lord for sense gratification and become more and more entangled in material existence, which is not the purpose of creation, certainly we become thieves, and therefore we are punished by the laws of material nature. A society of thieves can never be happy because they have no aim in life. The gross materialist thieves have no ultimate goal of life. They are simply directed to sense gratification. nor do they have knowledge of how to perform yajnas. Lord Chaitanya, however, inaugurated the easiest performance of yajna, namely the Sankirtan yajna, which can be performed by anyone in the world who accepts the principles of Krishna consciousness. And we'll read that verse again. In charge of the various necessities of life, the demigod, being satisfied by the performance of yajna, sacrifice, supply all necessities to man. But he who enjoys these gifts without offering them to the demigods in return is certainly a thief. Om Jnana Timrandasya Gananjana Shlakaya Chaksur Anmulitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Mukam Karoti Bachalam Pangum Lankai Degurum Yat Kripatamaham Bande Shri Gurum Dinataranam. So this is a very informative verse in the sense that those living entities currently populating the planet very rarely stop to consider the source of their sustenance. Where we stroll into a grocery store and we see that the shelves are stocked, but very few people take the time to consider what the source of this produce is. How is it, even the logistics behind bringing it from the farm to the table is beyond most people's interests. We may even know about it, but very little concern because everything seems to be available without any difficulty. But the fact is that even up till 100 years ago, and in many places in the planet right now, everyone has to work for their food directly, either by tilling the land or caring for the livestock. And this certainly brings them closer to appreciating the connection, as it's mentioned here, between the sun, the moon, the rainfall. All these things are beyond our direct control. And in that frame of mind, close to the land, people have that appreciation. But remotely now, living in an urban situation, that connection is broken. We don't stop to think that food is dependent on sun, rain, the wind, weather conditions, whatever is required for a successful crop, basically. And so, therefore, there's very little appreciation. People think that, and the common example that Srila Prabhupada used to use, which many people may have heard, was that at the time of the Bolshevik Revolution, when the people were in great difficulty for many reasons, the communists would make a show that, why don't you ask God for your bread and see if he delivers it? And obviously, under the circumstances, we know that this is a false premise being used, for political purposes, because then they would roll back the tarp on the truck and say, here, we have brought you bread. So therefore we are better than God. That was the point that they were making. So this is a very gross analogy, but the communists use it very effectively. And then in the sense that, everything is owned and controlled by God, here is the formula how one is able to live in harmony with nature by acknowledging that who is the actual proprietor. And there's a verse later in the Bhagavad-gita that says, Bhoktaram Jagnatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Suridam Sarvabhutanam Yad Gyatva Mam Shantam Richati. And Prabhupada said this verse is the peace formula. Because when we understand that God is actually the supreme enjoyer, as we see in this verse, that he is the recipient of all sacrifice. And many traditions we still have in the harvest time, in many cultures, where the first produce was offered to whatever demigod was indigenous to that particular area. And in some places, this may still prevail. But the fact is, the idea was to acknowledge that this is coming from a higher power, and that we are able to access, whether it's by growing or manufacturing, etc., only because the ingredients are made available to us. So so the peace formula is that if we acknowledge that God is the proprietor, then we should offer everything first to him. That's done. There's another verse in the Gita that describes whatever one does, yat koroshi, yadasnasi, yad jahoshi dadasi. Whatever one eats, offers, gives away, sacrifices, whatever he does should be done as an offering to God. So this brings one to a level of peace not available to those who are struggling hard with trying to, make a living, so to speak. Everyone has to work hard. There's nothing is achieved in that sense, not in the material world at least, without some endeavor. And so but ultimately, the result depends on, in many cases, the whims of material nature. It's like the farmer. He can put the seeds in the ground, but if nothing else cooperates, you don't have proper sun or too much rain, too little rain, even winds can blow away the topsoil or the seeds themselves. So one has to be cautious in regards to understanding his relationship with God, that in all circumstances, we are dependent on a higher nature. And whether one has understood correctly through the scripture that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is that person, or as it's described in this verse, if one sees that the demigods, Indra, the god of rain and thunder, or Surya, the god of the sun, who many people familiar with yoga pay their obeisances to in the morning. Without them, there is no existence. So this is a very interesting junction where intelligent persons have to come to the understanding that I am dependent. And to the extent that one acknowledges this, he begins to make spiritual advancement. He understands that I am not the doer. That verse, Yat Karosh Yadas Nasi, it says, whatever you do, all these things must be done for the pleasure of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And if humankind was unified in this consciousness, then there would be peace, because no one would be encroaching on others' property. Right? This same basic premise is there in all philosophies. Just like thou shalt not steal, or thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's property. This is the principle of stealing or envy or jealousy. This is not unique to any particular faith. It is there embedded in the moral DNA of all humans. This is what differentiates a human from the animal, the ability to understand good from evil, or hear the mode of ignorance. Because this, how we denote the mode of goodness, the mode of passion, mode of ignorance, how we define that, and many people may try to offset some level of guilt by projecting that, I was impelled to do this activity due to circumstances. This, of course, this is not an excuse, but yet people will say that, I had no choice. I was forced to steal, or I was forced to kill, or I was forced to so many things. And to the extent that they're slaves to the material nature without understanding, without the resources to control their mind and senses, that has some validity. Just like in a court of law, they don't hold non corpus mentis. If a person cannot understand that what they have done is wrong, then they cannot be judged according to the same standard as a person who is competent. So there's some concession. But ultimately, everyone will reap the results, just like it's described, as you sow, so shall you reap. If not in this lifetime, certainly then at the time when one has to change his body. The time of death is not time and tide, wait for no man. And those of us who are retired, who are getting older, we understand this, and we've seen it in the past. We've seen our family, we've seen our relatives. Everyone has gone through this. So it is not a new thing, but still people are thinking that it won't happen to me, or it won't happen now to me. But this is the hands of fate are inescapable. And the only escape, the only exit is transcendental knowledge, is to know one's destination. So therefore, on the masthead of Srila Prabhupada's Back to Godhead magazine, he used that specific terminology. He could have said many things, but the goal of life is to return back home, back to Godhead. This is our constitutional position. And of course, these topics are touched on briefly in the Bhagavad-gita. Krishna here is speaking for our benefit to Arjuna, who finds himself in a very difficult situation, confronted with circumstances that certainly seem to be beyond his control, that he was compelled to fight by the belligerence of his other family members, deprived of his birthright, and but yet not willing to do his duty, to fulfill his dharma. And in that case, therefore, this is we can relate to that. That if one doesn't know what his dharma is, the essence of action, who am I, who is God, and what is my relationship? That relationship is dharma. So Arjuna was concerned. He had what he should do under the circumstances. On one side, if he took up the task of defending his dynasty, then he would have to slaughter half his family, essentially. And so he declined initially. And Krishna had to bring him to the transcendental knowledge that first of all, you are not this body, and that this situation is not of your doing, but it has been, everything is being arranged by the divine providence, you can say. And your only course is to do your duty under this, at this particular time. And so Krishna had to clear all of his misconceptions and say, never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor any of these kings, nor in the future shall they ever cease to be. So this is the start of transcendental knowledge, that you're not the doer. The hands of fate have already killed all these persons who are assembled on the battlefield. You are just an instrument acting under a divine instruction. So therefore, for you, there is no sin. So this is, but this was a gradual, Krishna is speaking 700 verses in 18 chapters. And we finally see that the Sarvadhamma Pratyaja Mamekam Sharanam Bhaja. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. So Krishna's final instruction in this regard. I will deliver you from all sinful reaction. Do not fear. So here we have everything in a nutshell. That if in this lifetime, if one does not appreciate how he is able to live, and he cannot understand how these things are not under his control, and give credit to the Supreme Lord, who is providing all necessities of life, then he is truly an unfortunate person. He cannot see the forest for the trees. He sees the sun and the sunrise on a regular basis. He sees the stars in the sky, and if he has no inclination to question the nature of his existence, then unfortunately he will remain bewildered. His eyes will remain closed. And that's prayer we say at the beginning of these classes. Om Jnana Timarandasya. So that the teacher, the spiritual master, has opened my darkened eyes with the torch of knowledge. So this torch of knowledge, this transcendental information, it's only available by approaching someone who is already self-realized. And that verse is also there in the 4th chapter. That tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevya. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. So seeing the truth, this is the unique qualifier of a genuine spiritual teacher. Just like if you've never been to India, you need a guide to take you and show you so that you can have an appreciation of the unique art, architecture, and whatnot. Otherwise, you're simply left to wander from one place to another without any real guidance or direction. And you won't get the benefit. You won't get the appreciation or the knowledge. So spiritual life is a much more valuable endeavor And those who think that they can navigate this path without any guidance, they're truly bewildered. Because if they'd already had the answers, then they wouldn't be in the situation that they're in. One has to be able to access something, this is the meaning of the word transcendental, something beyond one's own limited faculties. And this connection is established when one contacts a bona fide teacher. And this, the bona fide teacher is considered to be the external manifestation of God. And everything is there in the Bhagavad-gita if you're reading it carefully. And sometimes it may seem a little bit, how can you say, daunting. There's Prabhupada's Bhagavad-gita is the most complete because he gives the expanded purports that one would normally, I just as an example, when I was a young man, I worked for the New York Public Library on 42nd Street, main branch on Fifth Avenue. So it's a massive structure. And when you walk in the building, you see 3 levels. But in between those levels, there are many other levels. They're called stacks. And books are there, ancient manuscripts, first editions. So during my college years, I was interested in philosophy, not, really understanding why, but just that that was what you did when you were in college. You took philosophy 101 and you tried to exercise your intellect, something not much used back in the day, unfortunately. But I was reading a Bhagavad-gita that was a paperback. So what paperback Bhagavad-gita was maybe a 1/2 inch thick, maybe 3/4 of an inch thick. Not very big, fit in a back pocket. And the devotees were chanting outside. My office faced the Fifth Avenue. So facing Fifth Avenue. So the devotees would chant on Fifth Avenue. And I would hear them, as many times during the week that they would come, because they would move around. So sometimes they'd be chanting there and then move on to a few blocks away to 34th Street or a different location. And at lunch, we would sit on the steps in the front or in Bryant Park in the back. And while I was reading Bhagavad-gita, it crossed my mind that these people, they're chanting Krishna's name. But I couldn't see any connection between what I was reading and the fact that they were chanting Hare Krishna. So one of the devotees approached me while I was there. And so I just questioned him. I said, "What do you have to do with Krishna?" And the devotee said, "Well, what do you know about Krishna?" I said, "Well, I'm reading Bhagavad-gita and I see that Krishna is speaking to Arjuna. And of course, I had a completely impersonal understanding at the time. And I won't bother you with what that is, but that's the way it was explained back then." And so he said, "So what Bhagavad-gita are you reading?" And I showed him my paperback small book. And then he had so this is 1972. So he had the 1972 Macmillan edition, which had just come out, the first printing, the first edition, which, as you know, is probably 2.5 inches thick. So he pulls that out of his book bag and he says, so he looks at my Bhagavad-gita and he said, "That's not Bhagavad-gita." Then he holds up this Bhagavad-gita. He said, "This is Bhagavad-gita." He said, "That's like an abridged dictionary. This is like complete encyclopedia." of knowledge. I was quite taken aback, and unfortunately, I didn't take the Bhagavad-gita at that time. I had to go to the temple on Henry Street shortly thereafter, because my interest had been piqued, but I was a little embarrassed so anyway, by Krishna's arrangement, I was able to get to the temple on Henry Street and get a Bhagavad-gita, and finally felt that I had, after even working in the library, I thought, here is where I'll find the answer to all my questions. I wasn't finding it in college. College was not satisfying at all. I didn't have the discipline like Bhakti Shastra to pursue some specific discipline. And I was just taking this course and that course and trying to see if there was any benefit. But ultimately, I was frustrated because there was no real knowledge. So I thought the library will have the knowledge. But somehow or other, Krishna sent a devotee to point me in the right direction. Gave me a mantra card. And through that mantra card, on the back it says, chant these names of God and your life will be sublime. So that I can point to as the beginning, because that's when I began to chant. So I encourage everyone that if you're reading Bhagavad Gita and you want to get to the deeper meaning of Bhagavad Gita, that you please take the opportunity to chant the Maha Mantra, that Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This, the purification required to cleanse the accumulated misconceptions from not just this existence, this birth, but from many births. That is the primary instruction of the golden avatar Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that Chaita Darpana Marjanam, Bhava Mahadavadi Nirvapanam. So this, and one will become more familiar as he increases his spiritual reservoir of knowledge. The Bhagavad Gita that once intimidated me due to its size became something much more valuable because of its the breadth and the depth of information. And I realized that, there's no, as Srila Prabhupada would say, cut short. Instead of shortcut, sometimes Srila Prabhupada would say cut short. There's no shortcut. And one has to make the endeavor to read and appreciate. And the realization will come automatically. And that's also described there. Sarvasya chaham riddhi sanivishtom atak smritiya jnana pavanam cha. Krishna tells Arjuna that I am the source, of this knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. Because he says, because I'm situated in your heart. So one gets that very unique realization, how God is situated within the heart. And this is not just some conceptual, pseudo-intellectual realization. It's this, as you read in the Bhagavad Gita, all these things will become completely evident. Raja Vidya, Raja Guyam, Pavitra Midamuttamam. So this knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge. And because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting and joyfully performed. So this is, there's there's not much else you can say about that. The Bhagavad-gita is its own best advertisement. And speaking about the Bhagavad-gita is one of the greatest joys that a devotee can have, because he feels complete in this effort to bring enlightenment, which is without a doubt the highest welfare activity, and that, as those who are reading Srimad Bhagavatam are familiar, that after the Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam expands on this knowledge, all these subtle details that are present there, the cosmic manifestation, the nature of the soul and the interaction with the modes of material nature. That's there in the Bhagavad Gita, but not elaborately. We encourage everyone that as you're reading, to keep a log of your questions, so that you can ask, some person who you may have connection with, like Untitled Prabhu. There's there's so many, especially also here in the Brooklyn Temple. We have we have many teachers. Chandrasekhar Maharaj, he gives class here, I know, and Ram Roy Prabhu, who was also at some point, and of course Atmanivedana Prabhu, who's been doing this the longest here in New York continuously. This is a great testimony. Steadiness in service is probably the most important factor in success in spiritual life. One cannot be whimsical or capricious. He has to find something that connects him to Krishna, and that service will elevate him naturally to a higher understanding. That and again, the Bhagavad Gita tells us all. Krishna is telling Arjuna very clearly, in so many different ways. Always think of me, become my devotee. Man mana bhava mad bhakto. So please take advantage, not just of these classes, but of your independent reading. And of course, if anyone has any questions, Atmanivedana was saying that we could do it different ways, but I believe that it's more constructive at the end. And does everyone hear everyone's questions at that point? How does that work, Bhakti Shasha? Or do I only hear a question from one person at a time?
Yeah, usually we just let people unmute themselves and ask questions if they have. Whenever you are ready to take them.
I'm ready. If they're ready, I'm ready. Those who are still with us. I saw a couple of people took early leave.
With Zoom programs, sometimes you get strangers who may log into Zoom not for the same reason that everyone else here is attending, messing around. So
I can imagine that they must have thought, who's this strange head floating in front of this building?
I don't think it was. Sometimes before they even found what's here, they already had some other design in mind. So that was anyway. Today that's the case, but not like that's typical. But Sasha deals with that stuff. But but does anyone are some persons having a question to pose to Hansarupa Prabhu? If so, please unmute and begin.
What is our relationship with the demigods?
Well, we have a very.
I'm sorry to interrupt. We're thieves if we don't, actually worship them also. So,
No,
what is the
it's a good question. The demigods have a relationship with us for sure. They're controlling every aspect of our lives at this point. So the way we acknowledge that is we serve Krishna, who is their boss. We don't have to serve them directly or acknowledge them directly, but we do have to acknowledge Krishna. And if we don't acknowledge Krishna and we don't acknowledge the demigods, that's where your problems, it's not something that will be evident, but the fact remains is that everyone is a debtor. Everyone has an obligation, just like people say you have an obligation to society to perform your civic duty conscientiously. So in that same way, everyone has an obligation to the demigods who are providing everything for us, but we don't know how to satisfy that obligation. People are ignorant. They don't know what yajna is. It's not, in India, of course they do. And it's still common for people to perform yajna regularly for different purposes. And they're not just satisfying the demigods that, give us this day our daily bread. They're looking for many other things: health, wealth, wife, success. There's no end to man's demands, so to speak. But the analogy that we use is that of the tree. If one waters the root of the tree, then all the leaves and the branches are automatically satisfied. But if one tries to water the individual leaves, then it's a futile effort. The tree will die because the water needs to go to the root. So the root is the origin of the creation, Krishna. So if you satisfy Krishna, then automatically the demigod, the leaves, are satisfied. So this is the understanding that intelligent persons eventually come upon and see that, yes, why do I have to satisfy so many different demigods for water, for air, for this, for that? No, just all I have to do is satisfy the Supreme Lord, who is the Ishvara. He's the Deva Jagatpate. He's the God of all the gods. That's what Deva Jagat, the God of gods. So that's it. And so, so Ari, we're just respectful. We don't disrespect the demigods. When we're in India and we come to a temple of Lord Shiva or others, it's not that we just pass by. No, we pay our respects and we acknowledge that Lord Shiva is a very dear servant to Krishna. But my obligation is to Krishna, not to Shiva.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Any questions? There's the building behind me. We said earlier, this is Srila Prabhupada's final resting place. He wrote this particular version of Bhagavad-gita As It Is. His commentary is there. It's become the most famous Bhagavad-gita in the world, with millions upon millions of copies distributed in every language on the planet. And some of the effort required, even life and limb to bring it to certain countries. So wherever it goes, it flourishes, and the people are benefited. And we have so much gratitude for Srila Prabhupada for taking the trouble to cross the ocean in a steamship, something most people would not even consider. 39 days. 39 days. So and this month, actually, in in several days. On December 14th is the anniversary, the advent of Krishna speaking Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. So that's December 14th. And we have a program at the temple tomorrow. If anyone's in the neighborhood, December 12th, we'll do a jagya, just like in the Bhagavad Gita. We'll do a jagya, and we'll have readings from Bhagavad Gita. And the temple will be very nicely decorated, and there'll be a very nice feast in honor of Krishna speaking Bhagavad Gita. So that's tomorrow, starting at 4:30 at the temple in Brooklyn, 305 Skirmahorn Street. And every train goes there. We're the center of the MTA universe.
Yeah, so I encourage devotees to visit for it's also known as Gita Jayanti. So it's right.
Yes, Gita Jayanti.
So it's a great program, and it'll be very festive and transcendentally powerful. So if you can, please attend. Sarupa Prabhu, can I although I have a question. May I ask? All right.
Please, Prabhu, please.
Well, it's not exactly a philosophical question. Actually, I have two, but I'm going to start with this, and we'll see if there's time for my second. But or if someone else comes up with something before I go to the second, because I don't need to ask so much. But what I want to know is, actually, this is Subhangara's question, so I'm just conveying it for her. To you, Prabhu, could you tell us did you have any experiences in Srila Prabhupada's presence that you think you might like to share with us here, or do you have any? Are there any pastime experiences that you'd like to convey about how it worked building Prabhupada's Samadhi in Vrindavan? And I have to admit that these questions are a little more oriented towards persons who are devotees for some time, as distinct from persons who are newer to what's going on. But at the same time, hearing about these personal experiences with devotees and with Prabhupada, it's really fascinating and delightful for anyone. So I think it's fitting nonetheless. And since no one else had a question, I'm going for it. So that's it.
Well, there's I was very fortunate, and sometimes it's difficult to fathom. I mean, I was born in Hell's Kitchen and raised in Hell's Gate, which is the bridge that overshadows my neighborhood, Astoria, in Queens. So you couldn't have a more ordinary upbringing. But somehow or other, Srila Prabhupada came to New York, and I saw Srila Prabhupada when I was a young man, just, wasting time in the village. We would see, I even lived for some time across the street from the Gem Spa, which was where the devotees used to chant in St. Mark's Place. So I was hearing the chanting there, hearing the chanting at the library. I can't imagine how else I would have had the good fortune had I not been exposed to seeing the devotees or seeing Prabhupada at that point, and not committing any offenses, by which, in those days we were not very how can you say, respectful in our youth towards authoritarian figures or anything that we deemed, part of the establishment. And so the devotees definitely were not part of the establishment. And so we didn't have harbor any ill will towards them. So that certainly saved me, so that I was able to later receive the mercy of the devotees. And so when I joined the temple, Srila Prabhupada came shortly thereafter. And so I got to serve him directly, which was, again, just, it's difficult. I mean, if I look back on it, I can only say that it's the mercy of the other devotees who engaged me as a last resort, because I was a handyman, so to speak. I knew how to fix things. So Prabhupada would come to New York once a year, and so things would become, fall into some disrepair. So when I joined, just before Prabhupada had come, they engaged me in fixing up his quarters. So I was able to get the association of Srila Prabhupada's paraphernalia, carefully fix many things. And then during his stay, because I was able to do that, they allowed me to clean Prabhupada's quarters when he was there. And so in that situation, again, that you're rendering direct service. So even when he wasn't there and he engaged me in serving him and fixing up things, I already felt the satisfaction that I hadn't felt in any other occupation up to that point, doing seemingly menial tasks, glazing windows or fixing plumbing. I mean, these are not, you wouldn't normally associate them with any so-called satisfaction level or quota. So, but, and so when Srila Prabhupada was at the temple and we were serving him, we were able to share, we were able to get his remnants. This is not something that is common, but if one reads the Bhagavatam, the story of Narad Muni, who is the guru the author of Srimad Bhagavatam, he attained that level simply by taking the foodstuffs, by partaking of the foodstuffs that were left by those great souls, the Bhagavatas. And so we were fortunate at that time, and we didn't really know the fortune that we had, that we were able to eat on a regular basis Prabhupada's remnants, just because we had the service of cleaning his room. It seemed somewhat inconsequential in one sense, but I can only look back and realize how fortunate I was to be able to be in Srila Prabhupada's presence. And then we saw him many times over the next few years, of course, that he would come back again to New York, stay for longer periods. Whenever he was someplace else, like Philadelphia, Rath Yatra. The first Philadelphia Rath Yatra was 1975, so we were there for that. And at that time, many were initiated. And it was just, some of these memories are quite vivid still, and because they seem to have a more supernatural, how can you say, sense about them. Other day-to-day things you may not remember, but you remember everything when Srila Prabhupada was there. And all the activities that were going on. And the ability to render direct service to the pure devotee was immeasurable in spiritual opportunities. So we're very fortunate. And then we moved from Henry Street to 55th Street. And again, my service was to serve Srila Prabhupada. So in one sense, I guess if as long as spiritual master is satisfied with your service, then you remain fortunate in that respect. And so I was able to again serve him in that regard, to guard him and to clean his quarters and to just in general, just to be present in the absence, because he had his own personal servant, but the personal servant did not clean or thing like that. So that was left to us by great fortune. And of course, we built the first Rath Yatra carts for New York in 1976, the Jayananda, and that was, again, Prabhupada's mercy. We did that from, well, it was only 4 months. In 4 months, we built 2 huge carts and organized everything for a parade down Fifth Avenue. And of course, we never saw Srila Prabhupada more happy. I used my father's car to drive Srila Prabhupada from the airport, and in '76, and that was I'm sure my father benefited riding in that car after Srila Prabhupada rode in it. So, and for letting us use it, that was an interesting story. We went to go rent a limousine, and they asked us for a credit card. And in 1976, as opposed to now, none of us had credit cards. We said, well, we have $2,000 cash. And the counter person just looked at us somewhat incredulously and said, this is a $30,000 car. $30,000 at that time was quite big. It was a Lincoln limousine. Srila Prabhupada liked Lincoln, Ford, because of Ambarish and other things. So they said that this doesn't cover anything. There's no, if you have an accident, it's nothing. So we left completely disappointed. Prabhupada was coming literally the next day. So then I hadn't been home in some time. But I remembered my father mentioning that he'd gotten a new car, a Ford, an LTD, not a Lincoln, but it was a good enough car. You can see it in the pictures, the Prabhupada memories. And so I said, well, hey, I can go ask my father to borrow the car. And that was a little interesting. I hadn't lived in the house in many years by that point. And just, I go home, take the train, get off at the last stop at Ditmars, walk to the house in my dhoti, myself and my godbrother, and say, Dad, I need to borrow the car to pick up Prabhupada at the airport. And he said, okay. Which, we didn't know what he was going to say. We didn't have phones. We didn't call him ahead of time. So he said, no, man. He said, I need it back tomorrow night. I said, that's okay. No problem. We washed the car, made it, spotless inside and out, burned a bunch of spiritual sky incense inside, and then took it to the temple and picked up Srila Prabhupada at the airport. So there's so many opportunities that we had to associate with Prabhupada. So we were in that sense very fortunate. And after Srila Prabhupada left, of course, it was quite heartbreaking. But then I got the opportunity to construct Srila Prabhupada's Samadhi, the marble phase of construction. Everything you see there is marble. We have a reinforced concrete foundation, and then everything on top of that is marble. So, and that took quite a few years. That took six years. It's not like building something in America back then. All hand carved, and amazing the artistry, the capacity of these generational they call them mysteries, which means that a tradesperson, a mason, but a mechanic, or at the highest level of in that trade. Usually a mechanic doesn't mean someone who just works on your car. In the unions, a mechanic is someone who holds a higher level of capacity, like a master tradesman. So in any case, this capacity for service continues on till this day. We're still taking care of Srila Prabhupada's society. This is his society. We're the caretakers, and we feel very fortunate in that regard. And every day of those 6 years, I felt, because in that sense, everything, Prabhupada was present there. And we discussed earlier, Samadhi is a very sometimes misunderstood state of consciousness that one achieves even while living, but which continues even after the demise of the physical body. We don't. There's nothing artificial about such an understanding. One just has to have the capacity to appreciate this, where our real existence is. It's not in this mortal vessel. The consciousness, as it says in the Gita, from boyhood to youth to old age. Similarly, at death, the soul passes into another body. So this is there. So that's So we're able to associate with Srila Prabhupada every day in the Samadhi. And when you go to Srila Prabhupada's Samadhi, those who are fortunate to go there, you sense Srila Prabhupada's presence. It's not something contrived or imposed. Nobody has to say, do you feel it? Do you feel it? No. If you go there, you'll notice it. Vrindavan itself is a very special place. And in all of Vrindavan, Prabhupada Samadhi is a very special, unique place. And anyone who goes there has that feeling. They know it. People who are coming from outside who have never met Prabhupada, when they come into the Samadhi, they know that there's something special about it. So we see it on their faces all the time and their reaction. When I sit there chanting japa on my annual visits and watch the people, even George Harrison, I remember when he was sitting upstairs in Prabhupada's Samadhi, we have an upstairs walk parikram marg. It's like a veranda, indoor veranda, where you could walk around. And he would just sit there and chant. And I think I might have a photo of him chanting up there. But in any case, thank you for that question. It's always a pleasure to remember Srila Prabhupada and serving him. I was one of his bodyguards when he would come to New York. We felt very honored that we were entrusted with such a great responsibility to take care of that pure devotee. Any other questions, Prabhu, that I can?
Well, my other question is too long, so I'm going to save it for the next time we get your association. But just a quick follow-up on your response. What was it that led to your being appointed a bodyguard? I mean, there's many types of service, but why that one?
Well, when I was coming to the temple, after I got the courage to go to Henry Street, one of my godbrothers, Gorhari, a very sweet soul, lives in Alatra now. And he served Prabhupada in many capacities. He met Prabhupada at the Morning Star Ranch, the same ranch. It's a commune where Vishnu Jan Maharaj, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, and Gorhari and other devotees, they all came from that commune, a very eclectic place. So he was preaching to me essentially. When I would come, he got to know, a little bit about my background. My being someone in I don't know how you want to phrase it, but I was running with a pretty rough crowd back in those days. And so, he could understand that. He could see it from whatever my demeanor, this, that, the other thing. So, and I was also a student of martial arts because when I moved into the temple, I was still doing my forms. So I was, people knew that I was, that I could handle myself. I don't know how else you want to put it. So and so when Prabhupada came, I was one of those things. I was picked because I had certain abilities to guard, to protect. So that was how that evolved.
What did Prabhupada ever comment on your service as a bodyguard or
no.
express what he thought about it? It's an interesting service, right? I mean,
yeah, Prabhupada didn't know necessarily that that I was a bodyguard or that any of us, but there was always someone with him. So I'm pretty sure he understood that we were looking after him, protecting him one way or another. He never asked us that, are you my bodyguard? No, I was just one of the, basically what would be is I would sit outside his room, and if guests came and it was their appointed time, I would show them into the sitting room. If there was another guest already with Prabhupada, then I would ask them to sit down, and there's another guest and he'll be with you momentarily. But essentially I was there to make sure that there wasn't any strangers. Oh no, because 55th Street, it's the middle of the Manhattan. It would be unlikely for someone to get past the reception to the elevator bank, but it's possible. And the elevator on the 11th floor opened right outside Prabhupada's door. There were 2 elevators. So you came out of the elevator, all you had to do was 10 steps and you're in Prabhupada's sitting room on one side, and 10 steps on the other side, you were in his bedroom. So I was there to make sure that nobody who wasn't supposed to be there was on that floor. Even if devotees wandered up there, sometimes devotees wanted to go in and bother Prabhupada, and I would just say, Prabhu, you're not allowed to be here at this time. Go talk to, Gopijana Balba if you want to see Prabhupada, or go talk to, Prabhupada's secretary at that time, Hari Sari, says, but you can't just come up here. So I was, in that sense, I was the bad guy for the devotees, but I was the bodyguard. Nobody gets to see Prabhupada unless you have an appointment. And I would get to pay my obeisances every time Prabhupada walked in and out of his sitting room. I would get to see his lotus feet walking inches away from my face. So it was a perfect for me. I could have done that for lifetimes. Hopefully I can do it in the future. But, this is
Do you think, Prabhu, that you, when you were doing this quite personal service for Srila Prabhupada, do you think that you realized how uniquely fortunate the opportunity to have that service was?
I definitely felt fortunate. There's no doubt. We all, if you had any association with Srila Prabhupada, you felt fortunate. And we, amongst those of us who had that type of service where we were, always around cleaning or guarding or whatever was needed, because Prabhupada had a personal bathroom down the hall, we would clean that and make sure that it was suitable for the pure devotee to that extent. Prabhupada saw me cleaning the bathroom one time. He didn't say anything, but and I imagine that he was probably just wondering what this you have all these young people there. It must have surprised Prabhupada quite a few times that our capacity for just to amaze him with some of whatever our foolish antics. We'd be in the bathroom chanting. Why? Because who really cleaning the bathroom is not something that everybody relishes and thinks that, oh, I just want. But it was Prabhupada's bathroom, so it was different. And so we had he came in and I'm chanting just to keep my mind off of the fact that I'm cleaning a bathroom, because I have to remember this is Prabhupada's bathroom. It's not just any bathroom. So one of the devotees noted to me that Prabhupada mentioned to him that he came to investigate a sound. Why was someone chanting? Because for all he knew, somebody was chanting japa in the bathroom. Some crazy American foolish disciple was chanting japa in the bathroom. But then when he came in, he saw that I was cleaning the floor and chanting, not chanting japa. But he came to investigate. Prabhupada was pretty, aware of things, and I might have been chanting a little too loud, and it might have disturbed him, and he came to investigate. Of course, as soon as I saw his feet, I shut up. I, you know, I didn't, because at first, I got up because I didn't know if Prabhupada wanted to use the bathroom. Here I am cleaning, so I just kind of stood still for a second, and Prabhupada walked out. So I said, okay. So very interesting times.
You were in your early 20s then?
I was 20. Well, when I joined, I was 23, and that was 74. And then so Prabhupada was there in 74, 75, and then in 76 was the last time, of course, he came to New York, but he stayed for 11 days. So I was able to do that service, cleaning, guarding, for 11 days at that point. That was the most time we'd ever had continuously. Mostly Prabhupada would come for 3 days and then go on to the next temple. And we would follow him around also, because if he came to New York and then went to Philadelphia, we would just all go to Philadelphia as well. So we'd have him for 3 days in New York, and then at least 1 day in Philadelphia. We couldn't stay overnight, but we had our service to Radha Govinda. So, but we at least got to spend a day with him.
Well,
but New York, 11 days, that was so much mercy.
Yeah, I really can't imagine it, and that's really amazing. This experiences you had in the journey you've been working hard during all these years to push on Srila Prabhupada's mission. So thanks a lot, Prabhu, for giving a really good class, very edifying, and also answering my questions with all these personal anecdotes. Super interesting.
It's my pleasure, Prabhu. Thank you for allowing me to speak about Srila Prabhupada. It's always I have no problem, remembering so far. I hope I can remember up to that point when it really matters. So that
I'm confident that will not be an issue. So I guess we can close here. Prabhu, we usually wrap up with another short kirtan, if you would be okay with chanting again.
Yeah, absolutely, not a problem.
Okay, thank you. And so for the rest of you, for those who haven't heard me say this, so we'll all be muted while he leads in the chanting of Hare Krishna, singing. It will be short, so if you made it this far, stay a couple minutes more, please. But when he chants, so with kirtan, it's call and response fashion. So after he sings one mantra, he'll continue to keep singing since we're muted. But every second time, if you can, consider joining along in your own home or the location you're in, even though you're muted, and it makes the experience will be great if you're just listening, and even nicer if you join in. So that's it. Okay, take it away, Hansarupa Prabhu, please.
Hare Krishna. So we'll end the way we began, with the prayers to the spiritual master. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvashesha Shunyavadi Pastacha Deshatarane Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jaya Radha Govinda, Radha Govinda, Shri Radhe. Jaya Radha Govinda, Radha Govinda, Shri Radhe. Jaya Nrsimhadev, 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 Jaya Nrsimhadev, Jaya Nrsimhadev, 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 Jaya Nrsimhadev, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Srila Prabhupada, 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 Srila Prabhupada. Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. All glories to all the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
So thank you for the invitation, Prabhu. Very kind of you. And we look forward to seeing you and next time here also on 2nd Avenue.
Jai,
Or
yes.
in Vrindavan.
Oh, Yes, that would be great. Haven't been there in some time. Yes,
Well,
that would be
we
wonderful to see you
have
in
to
each of
arrange
these
a
places.
tour. Arrange a tour for all the devotees in Second Avenue.
We
All come at one time.
we did that I think two times, but
Wow, nice.
that was quite some years ago. It was before Sasha joined the group. It was before any people who are with us tonight joined the 26 Second Avenue group, even Sasha. But we did two trips that were probably a week and a half long or something like that. One was longer. Very nice, yeah. So yes, we probably should do it again. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'll look forward to it. If I can assist in any way, let me know. I know everybody in Vrindavan.
Oh, thank you, Prabhu. If the devotees, if the rest of the devotees would like to join me in expressing thanks and appreciation for Hansarupa Prabhu for his association this evening, let's do it now. His Grace Hansarupa Prabhu ki jai.